Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, so let's get started. And of course, at the end of the episode, we do the viewer's pick of the week, so be sure to leave your pick of the week in the comments below. So I had 10 comics this week, which is pretty average number of books for the haul. So number 10 this week was actually a digital exclusive book, which is Scott Snyder's Clear issue 1. I did a review for We Have Demons issue 1, which I actually thought was a pretty solid book. But obviously with Clear issue 1, I had a different opinion, which is interesting because I love Francis Manapul's artwork. You know, I'm a huge Francis Manapul fan, and this was probably the one I was most excited for because of that team up. But with this one, it was hard to get into, you know. It definitely has the same issues that most Scott Snyder books have for me, which is very wordy, and it's hard to get through some of the dialogue sometimes because it's so wordy. And that's really a big beginning of this. You don't even really get to see the main character about halfway into the issue, and by the end, you kind of get the gist of what this book's about. It's a murder mystery and has to do with the main character's wife, which is interesting, but because I didn't really care about the main character, it was hard to really care about the overall mystery. I definitely applaud it for being different. I like that this was not a generic structure for a comic. It definitely was out there, but because I think it broke the molds so much, it honestly made it harder to read this issue. So overall, I'm giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, and that is The Joker, issue 8. And, we're getting to the end of this. I think we only have like 1 or 2 more issues until the end of this series, or at least the end of James Tynion on this series. And I feel like this book's kind of been on a stall for a couple of issues here. Here and there's been some solid one-shots, but honestly, a lot of times it has to do with more of like Barbara or the Court of Owls that I've been enjoying more than the Jim Gordon story. And then obviously we don't get a lot of Joker in this book, which is fine. That wasn't something I was interested in with issue 1, but, it is called The Joker. I do want to see that plot progress a little bit more with Jim Gordon, and we're really not seeing that here. I will say this issue did a little better with that. We do get to see the origins of Vengeance / Bane's daughter, but it was so expositionary heavy that I didn't quite care about by the end that she was going to team up with Jim, and that was kind of the story, because it was just so much like, this is what happened in her life, and I just felt like it was telling us more than showing us, and with a comic book, I'm more into the visuals and seeing what's happening than just telling us what happens. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which I'm actually kind of surprised this was so low, and that is the Immortal Hulk, issue 50. I really enjoyed the last 2 issues of Immortal Hulk. Honestly, I believe they're both my pick of the week. So leading into this finale, I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be balls to the wall. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And this one, because I think it's actually a $10 book. It is $10, and it's a really long book. So you can kind of see that there. It's a really thick book, but I don't think that was a good thing. Sometimes there's such a thing that it's too many pages, it's too long of a story, there's too much story, and that's exactly what happened here. It felt like it was very bogged down. It was hard to kind of get into the character moments, which I think it did a good job at, the overall theme of what makes a monster, and is Hulk truly a monster? But the things I really enjoyed about Immortal Hulk was the family. I really liked those characters, and you don't really get to see as much of them. It really is a Bruce Banner story. And, it goes into that this does feel like a beginning, middle, and end, but, there's a little sadness there that I don't know what pieces the next creative team can really pick up, because it closes the door so tightly here. And a little unsatisfying, too. I don't think there was really a big moment in this issue that I'm like, man, what a memorable finale for such a memorable run. And I don't think I really got that here. So overall, I'm giving that 3 stars. I was a little disappointed, but still, if you have not read Immortal Hulk, I do recommend the full series. I think there's some really great character beats, and obviously, it was really great to see something different with Hulk. And this is definitely one of my favorite runs in a long time. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Titans United, issue 2. And this is just a fun book, but it's just also kind of there. There's not much story to it. It's just that the same team from the TV show Teen Titans are fighting these villains that are like D-list villains that are stealing powers and becoming more powerful. And we get to see the aftermath of that in this issue. We get to see some teamwork and Superboy being trapped and getting kidnapped by Blackfire, I think her name is, Starfire's sister. Blackfire. And it's in that way, it's just a fun kind of old school superhero adventure, and I like that aspect, but also as I read a comic, I want something new and I want to feel invested in the book at the same time, and I don't know if I really got that here. So I don't know how long I'll keep this on my pull list. I do want to try out the next issue, see where it goes, but as of right now, it's an okay book, but I actually think it's better than some of the other Teen Titans books we've gotten in the past, and it does have a big reminiscence to old school stories, like I said. And the artwork is really solid for this book too. So that's been really great for the book. So I give that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Batman Urban Legends, issue 8. And I was excited for this one because of Batwoman. We haven't had a Batwoman story in a while. This is a 2-parter. The other stories I really was not invested in. I will just say that there. I'm going to probably only dig deeper into Batwoman. Azrael, I don't really care about as a character. Don't really care about Professor Pig. And I didn't like the Outsider story from the previous issues, so I didn't quite care about this one besides the Red Robin cliffhanger. But yeah, I wasn't a really big fan of the other 3. And I don't even think the artwork was strong for Professor Pig or Azrael. I thought the Outsiders artwork was pretty strong. But going into Batwoman, the artwork I thought was a little inconsistent, but for the most part, it was okay enough. But the story I really liked. Honestly, I haven't read a great Batwoman story in a while. Obviously, she hasn't even had a series in a while. So it was nice to just get a really cool character-driven story with her and her sister not being a villain anymore, which is really interesting. And also kind of tying into Fear State, where we get to see the Anti-Oracle kind of play a bigger part and Cassandra Cain killing people. What? And Cassandra's actually not doing that. So Batwoman has to figure out with her sister, who is being manipulated as well, how to fix this. And honestly, I have not been liking Fear State as much. I have not been invested into it. But this kind of made me feel invested because it really put character first with these larger events. So I enjoyed this one a lot. I'm excited to see where part 2 will go. So overall, giving this whole issue 3 stars. Again, it's a little harder to rank because the other 3 stories I wasn't as invested in, but I really think this is honestly worthwhile just to at least get the Batwoman story because I really enjoyed that one. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Power Rangers issue 13. And we are getting closer and closer to this war. And our Power Rangers, having this kind of, I would say, Martian moment from the movie, where they are trying to survive on this planet and just trying to leave a message of like, this is what is happening right now, and they don't even know if they're gonna survive. And I really like the character work here. I enjoyed just seeing the 3 interact with this kind of big weighty information and in this really weighty experience that they're going through. And I especially love Trini. I think Ryan does such a beautiful job at Trini as a character, and I love seeing her get more screen time, and we really get to see some good emotions through her here. We get some good Lord Draken moments in this one too. It's just overall pretty solid issue with another big cliffhanger of possibly this new Ranger that shows up that will hopefully help them in the long run. And the artwork has been really solid for this book as well, especially the darker tone for this series. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 76. So this is the second issue for the new creative team, and I really like the Peter stuff. I really like that page with the spider sense and him feeling danger within his body, and the scientist slash doctor is trying to figure out what's going on with him, while he's also trying to keep a secret identity, and Ben wanting to be Spider-Man and balancing that. But there's some really good emotions between the core group, Aunt May, Mary Jane, and Peter Parker, that I really enjoyed. The stuff the reason why it's a little lower than, like, let's say pick of the week is because I'm not as invested in the Ben stuff. Once it always turns to Ben, I'm like, go back to Peter. I want to see what's going on with Peter, because that was the more interesting thing for me. The artwork was really good. Like I said, there's some really interesting layouts in this issue, and you get into the head of these characters very well. So overall, giving this 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Mazebook issue 2. This is a Jeff Lemire book, and a really great family book, which, Jeff Lemire definitely does a beautiful job at. And he also does the art for this too. I really like the color palette, where you get to see this really bland colors, and then you get to see the red as he figures out more about his daughter. But his daughter's missing. Everyone thinks she's dead, and he realizes, no, she's giving a sign through this maze, which is the city that we find out in the end, and he needs to figure it out because no one else believes him. And this whole issue is about him trying to get people to believe in him, and him trying to figure out what this larger mystery is, and by the end figuring out what it is. And honestly, it's just a really solid book, and like I said, it's everything that Jeff Lemire does really well in one book. It's also a longer book, but it doesn't feel too long. It's interesting because Immortal Hulk, I said, it felt very bogged down, and it did. This one, I think, is about like 50 pages, and I never felt like, when's this going to be over? I felt like everything was still very intriguing, and that's kind of a hard pace with such a long book. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Harley Quinn, the anime series, issue 2. The first issue, it was a little harder to get into the tone because you're so used to something from the show. But I feel like this got its footing a little bit more. I felt like the jokes landed better, and then I feel like some of the character work was better. Maybe it was the inclusion of Catwoman, but I just had a really fun time with it, and just seeing them all interact. There's some good jokes that land, like I said. While Poison Ivy's still trying to figure out her feelings with Harley, but I feel like that wasn't focused as much here, which I actually liked. I liked that was kind of the more fun, bombastic things we're used to from the show, throwing in Batman and Batman and Catwoman's relationship as well, and even Jim Gordon. So it was a nice pause from the actual road trip aspect, and just giving us the fun side characters that I think also makes Harley Quinn such a good show, especially Catwoman. And there's some good fun artwork here, a lot of funny moments, like I said, through the art. I love the cartooniness of it. So overall, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to my pick of the week, which is Second Coming, Only Begotten Son, issue 6 by Ahoy Comics. And I love this book. I am sad that it's going on another hiatus, but glad to see we're getting another volume. And this one does everything that I've enjoyed about Second Coming. It's a commentary of what is the place of God. And in this one, we really get to see that contrast where Jesus is like, do I even belong to be here? Should I have disciples? Should I even tell people what to do? And then you get to see a different perspective from God, saying like, no, you just gotta let them be and live their life. And that's kind of the point. You could guide them as much as you want, but it is their life, and that's kind of the point. And it's this really bigger commentary about how do you live life? What is life? And this comes from, obviously, the perspective of God and Jesus, but also a superhero with godlike powers who just had a kid. I will say that wasn't as focused on in this issue. I do believe they really tried to do more of the God stuff, but it really was good, and you get to see the perspective of a guy who followed all the rules and went to heaven and was disappointed, and see him live his life a little more too. And artwork is always so good for this book, and I just love how satirical it is. I could laugh and cry all in one page, and it really ended things very well for this arc, and I'm excited to see where the next arc will take us. So overall, giving that 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was, and of course, we're at the viewer's pick of the week from last week, which was Captain Marvel, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.